Today my guest is Bruce McGregor, an expat New Zealander and the owner of Swinglift Transport Services and TK Containers. Bruce has been in the shipping and transport industry for over 25 years and has introduced innovative technologies to America, such as the Swinglift system. In this episode, we'll discuss how he got his start, his experiences in the industry, the future of AI, and maybe just a little bit of politics.
So is this the software that you use?
Yeah, there's a lot of software. Currently I'm using OBS for the video, I'm using Audacity as like a backup recording, and then I'm using the two Android phones and I've got them in developer mode, and I'm running open source software to basically screen share it. Yeah, so...
So you just got it rigged it.
It's very hacked together, yes. But it works for now, I think. Anyway, I think we're recording. Hi Bruce, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Ah, shit.
We're hopeless.
This is the same thing. When I'm filming my YouTube videos, it's the same thing. Like, I start filming and it's just stuttering, it's just constant restarting, and I finally get into it. Anyway, you know what? We're just going to start from here.
Yep.
How you doing, Bruce?
I'm good, Livy. Thank you.
Awesome. So you are probably one of the busiest people I've met in my life. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on.
That's good. I need to come here and practice my public speaking anyway, so I'm happy to be here.
Same, definitely. So yeah, let's start with what is it you do?
Okay, so Swinglift Transport is the trucking part of the business that just moves the containers, and TK Container is the container part of the business that rents containers and sells them. But probably to understand why we're in trucking, we probably need to do a bit of a background on what a container is. So are you okay with me doing that?
Yeah, sure.
Giving you a background?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay. So a shipping container is a standardized box, and they started in New York. Some New York business guy, he had a bunch of freight to move from New York to Houston. And he came up with the idea that if he standardized it all and put it in exactly the same size box in New York, and he had the same equipment and the same boxes in Houston, he could just swap them back and forward. So that ended up being the shipping container. So fast forward a number of years, and now every country in the world has a standardized shipping container, and they use the same equipment to load it and unload it. So that's the ISO container. So the cranes that we use are specifically made for picking up ISO containers. So every container in the world that gets moved around has the same corner castings, the same lifting mechanisms, can pick them up. Truck, train, boat, anything you're going to move it on. Forklifts are all standardized for a shipping container. So the trailers that we use are specifically designed for picking up shipping containers. It's like a self-loading semi-trailer for containers. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, honestly, that was an excellent explanation. Did you rehearse that?
I probably did, actually. I've been thinking about it on the way here.
That was very good. Yeah, so I know a little bit about your business, and I know that what you're doing here in the States is very unique. The technology behind how you transport the containers. Yeah, so it's all... So how does that exactly work?
So I think because America's so big, is probably the best way to explain it. This is a massive economy, and there's thousands and thousands of containers coming in here to the States, coming and leaving. So they don't put the containers on the ground. They just leave them on a chassis. They leave them on the wheels. So when all the containers come in, they take them off the ship, put them on a train. They go all over the country. When it gets to the train station or the railhead, they take them off the train, they put them on a chassis, then the chassis goes to a dock door. And I'm sure you've seen from driving around the States, you'll see these warehouses with literally hundreds of dock doors from one end to the other. So that it's basically a truck and trailer, which is a trailer with a container on it. It backs up to the dock door, they unload the merchandise, the trailer goes back to the train station, they unload it with a forklift, they take the container off the chassis, and then they ship that container back to wherever it needs to go, but everything stays on wheels. So out of the hundreds of thousands of containers that come to America, there's very few people need them on the ground. So we're probably with our side loaders, we provide that service in the cities where we're doing business.
Okay, so the traditional, just so I can sort of understand, the traditional business model is trucks they go to the dock, they pick up the containers, and those are loaded onto the trucks with cranes. And then when they deliver it to places where they want it unloaded onto the ground, they normally either have to use a forklift or other cranes that they have at their location, or they have the tilting trucks, right, where it slides off the back.
Yeah, and they'd, on shipping containers, they'd very rarely use a tilt trailer. They just about always take it to a building, like a warehouse, and de-van it there, take all the merchandise out. Then they'd put it on smaller trucks and deliver the merchandise using a smaller, like a bobtail truck or a little truck with a lift gate. So they very rarely take the container and set it on the ground to be unloaded. It's almost always at a warehouse or a dock door.
Oh, I see, right. So it backs up to the dock door and that's level. And okay, right. That makes sense.
So we don't do a ton of work for the shipping industry. We do some of it, but it's always like the very specialised stuff. But then with all them containers that come to the States, a lot of them get sold in the, we'll call it the aftermarket. So they're basically repurposing the containers to use them for like construction companies, industrial companies, power companies. So a lot of the containers that we move have been repurposed for domestic use. They've been turned into like field offices or just basic storage containers for the construction companies or big industrial companies are using. So we probably do a little bit of import-export type business, but the majority of ours is the containers that have been repurposed for domestic use within the States.
Right, and just so I guess the audience can get a better idea of why what you do is unique, is because the way you guys lift it off is you've got built-in cranes on the trucks that physically are able to lift the container on and off, whereas traditionally they would either have to use the dock, like you said, or they have to use like a forklift or a crane, or tilt it and basically slide it off the truck. So would you say you're in a relatively niche market with what you're doing? Yeah,
for sure, yeah. And like if we just concentrate on the domestic market where the containers have been repurposed, so what we do, well, the service we probably provide that other people don't, is if they want to move it loaded, we can pick it up loaded and take it to the next location and set it on the ground loaded. With the other companies will tell the customer to take the stuff, like unload it, and they'll move the container empty. And you can use cranes and all kinds of stuff to move them if you want to, spend that much money and have that many people involved in the transport. So probably a good example would be if you wanted to move it with a crane, you'd have to have a flatbed truck and a crane and a few people to hook the crane up. So you'd have 3 or 4 people, they'd pick it up with a crane, they'd set it on a flatbed trailer, they'd take it to the other end, then they have to have another crane at the other end, another couple of guys to rig it up, to pick it up, and then the flatbed would drive out from under it and the crane would set it. Whereas with us, we've got a crane mounted trailer, we pull up beside it, one driver, pick it up on the truck, that truck goes to the next location, sets it on the ground. So it's a one-man job.
Actually, I'm going to put a clip up of that just so people can get a better visual representation, because in real life they are very, very cool, the cranes that you've got. And so, I mean, I guess I'll start with how did this come about? Because you said this is a niche thing. This didn't really exist here in America. So how did it begin? How did you get the idea?
So we'll go back to a bit of history to begin with. So I guess once a container was invented, there was a need in these small countries where they don't have huge infrastructure. There was a need for a self-loading semi-trailer. And I'm just going on what I've learned over the years. So I think the first ones that decided, because they're Germans, they have to make something. The Germans decided they'd make one. So they made a self-loading semi-trailer that was a massive, big, heavy, not very functional lift, but it worked for heavy containers. So they'd made one, and then I think that was in use for a little while before the Swedes, I think, they had to prove that they were smarter than the Germans, so they made one. And I think that guy was pretty successful. That's the hammer lift, or Ben Goloff hammer. He's probably the most successful guy on the manufacturing side. So he started making them in Europe, and then the Kiwis, they decided they had to be as smart as the Swedes too. So they started designing them and making them, and I think they probably took off. The side loader concept took off in New Zealand, Australia, and the islands because they don't have the massive infrastructure like we have in America or Europe. So probably per capita, there's a lot more of them down there than anywhere else in the world. So if you're from New Zealand or Australia or South Africa,
which we're from New Zealand,
yeah, you're probably quite familiar with them. You see them everywhere.
Definitely.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, I had moved to America in 1988 to play rugby poorly. If anyone knows anything about rugby in 1988, if you were good at rugby, you didn't come to America. You went somewhere else. So normally the people that ended up here were coming here for a good time, not to be good at rugby. So I ended up here playing rugby and having a really good time. And then I was an auto mechanic because in New Zealand I'd trained as a mechanic. So I did auto mechanics here for quite a while, and then I had a friend who was exporting engines to New Zealand in containers, and he was having the problem of not being able to get the container on the ground to load it. He had to find a dock door to load it if he wanted to load a container. So it was really his idea. He was like, we should bring them to America and see if they work here. And he was honestly more into the manufacturing end of it. He wanted to manufacture the side loaders here. So we purchased one, brought it over here, got a new truck, and we just kind of started using it one container at a time. And we never really probably got far enough down the road to get into the manufacturing. We just started using them and kind of morphed into a container transport company and a rental company rather than being a manufacturer.
I think that was probably a wise idea. I can imagine manufacturing your own cranes would be quite a challenge. Yeah.
And I think it's probably a bit more to it than meets the eye. A lot of people look at it and think that they can do it, but I think there's a lot more engineering goes into them cranes and chassis than what people realise. So that was kind of our start. We got one here. We got a 20-footer here, and we used that, and it was reasonably successful. But we'd only moved 20-foot containers, so we used that for about 6 months, I'd say, maybe even a bit longer. And then we noticed that a lot of our customers were really wanting to move the 40-footers loaded. So we found 2 40-footers in New Zealand that were used, and we chopped them up into pieces and brought them to America. And then the guy that was our partner, we kind of assembled them, put them all together. But these were not pretty trailers. These are pretty rough equipment. It was used when it left New Zealand. So then we had to get over here and figure out how it worked, and put it back together. So we did that, and we started using them old lifts, and it was there's definitely a lot of people. Once they seen our service, I think they really liked it. But I don't think it would have worked if we didn't have the cranes and the equipment here. Like you can talk about it all day long, but if you don't have the equipment to show people and actually do the work. So we kind of, once we got them, we actually went out and did the work and showed people how it worked, and then we definitely picked up a lot of business after we did the show and tell thing.
Okay. So what I find really interesting, just generally speaking with people, is hearing sort of how they got their start. Because including myself, I think there's a lot of people who, have come out of high school or college, or even are, in later parts of their life and aren't just quite sure what exact direction they want to go, or maybe they want to start a business. They're not sure how to get there. So I guess starting off with your story, I guess you came out of high school. I presume you didn't have ambition straight away as starting a big trucking company. So Where did it all begin? When you came out of high school, I guess, where did your journey start?
So
what were your interests?
Probably from when I was a kid, I worked at gas stations in New Zealand in Oamaru. So I'd always worked at gas stations, changing tyres. And then when I finished, I did my school cert at 15 and a half, whatever, in New Zealand. And I just passed that. I mean, I'm just past it by the skin of my teeth. So after that, you can. Back then, they split New Zealand off into the dumb half and the smart half. So I was barely in the smart half. So then I could get a job as an apprentice mechanic. So I got a job as an apprentice mechanic and went through all that training. And I think that's probably a good start because they really do give you good training in New Zealand. So I think I had the fundamentals, mechanical fundamentals, electrical, welding, all that kind of stuff that you always use. So I was done with that by the time I was probably 19, I guess. I had a trade certificate in automotive engineering, they called it then, but it's basically you're a mechanic. So I worked for another couple of years between Australia and New Zealand. And then one day I decided I'd just go to America to see what was happening over here. So I got on an airplane, came over here and played a bit of rugby and got jobs and kind of started my own mechanic business. So I did that I still had that until 2004, so I kind of overlapped the Swinglift business with mechanic business.
So moving to America, was that purely just screw it, I'm going to see what happens? Or was there anything that compelled you to move to the States?
There probably was some things that compelled me, but I probably wanted to say them online. Probably my poor behaviour in New Zealand, maybe. It was time to leave. But no, I did always probably have a bit of a passion for America because of the cars and everything. So it was just a good timing to come and have a change of scenery.
So what was that transition like? Because I myself, I moved here coming up to almost 2 years, and for me personally, it was quite a big culture shock. I think I came here a little naively thinking, New Zealand's a Western country, American's Western, it's all going to be the same.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's very much different. There's a lot of pros, a lot of cons, as with everything. So I guess what were the big highlights for you when you came here?
When I first came here, it was, for me when I first came here, it was a super exciting place. Like there was as much work as you wanted to do. Gas was 90 cents a gallon. I mean, there was nothing. Good
old days.
Yeah, but there was nothing you couldn't do. But I mean, it was definitely a culture shock. But I don't think it was. To me, it was more exciting than a shock. I think it was a good place, really cool place to work. And I think the work life to me was so much easier here than New Zealand. It seemed like the Americans seemed like they treat their work like a sport, kind of, rather than a grind. It's not something that you go to work and it's definitely not a miserable thing to be at all day long. It wasn't for me anyway. And there's always opportunities to do whatever you wanted to do. Even when I first came here, I'd just buy and sell cars, and it seemed like, damn, I can make a couple of $1,000 real easy just buying and selling cars. So it was easy to make money. Living was super cheap. I mean, like everything was cheaper here. Gas, beer, accommodation, anything you wanted to do was reasonably inexpensive, and you could still make pretty good money. And then that stuff's obviously changed over the years. It's not quite as the way it used to be now, but yeah, from a work perspective, I think I really enjoyed it a lot more than I did New Zealand. New Zealand, if you showed up at 8 o'clock, you better start working on the dot at 8 o'clock and not stop until you're finished, or someone will be putting their foot in you.
So in that case, you came here and you did side jobs and you made income and off selling cars, and you had your automotive shop. So I guess you said before that your mate, he was trying to move engines and he needed a solution. And then where did the Swinglift idea come from? Was it just that in New Zealand at the time they also had it?
Yeah.
And it was just, how can we look at bringing that over here?
Yeah, and I think we thought it would actually take off like mainstream in the import-export business. And we really tried to market to that business really hard in the beginning. We tried to find people that wanted some people that wanted to load containers on the ground. So we beat on doors forever trying to find them customers. But I think the hard thing about that is, like in our customer database now, we have thousands of customers that use us maybe once a year if they're lucky, once every 2 years. I mean, they know who we are, but they don't need us. They don't need us every day. They need us once in a while.
And is that because you're like quite a specialised business?
Yeah, it's because we're so specialised. So to market to all them people and find all them people when they need you, by the time they need you, they've probably forgotten about you. So it was quite hard to market to that industry. But just driving around, I think we all noticed that there's so many containers being used by construction companies and like industrial companies that are building power plants and all these big companies that are using containers in the aftermarket. So that was who we started directing our marketing towards, them guys, and we're probably not very good at marketing. We definitely weren't good at marketing back then. We would just, rock up to the job site and see some containers on the ground and say, do you want us to move them for you? We'll show you how to move them loaded. And a lot of people said, you're idiots, don't go away and don't come back. And then every now and again you get some guy that'll be like, yeah, all right then, show them a picture of the truck, show up with the truck, move the containers, and we'd have a customer for life. So
yeah, but that sounds exactly like your real traditional entrepreneur, startup story, where you brought in something new. Obviously, you faced a lot of adversity. Getting it rolling was hard, but now obviously it's doing very well, and you found your niche in the market.
Yeah, I think we probably still have our core base of customers, to be honest, that we've always had. I think every day people will see it and they're still surprised what it can do because they've just never seen it before. So I think it kind of markets itself in that respect. If you're out moving containers around, people see you and you get, you just get more and more business because people understand what it is. But I think it'll probably cap out. There's only so many containers that need to be moved on the ground in America, and it's probably very few compared to the total amount of containers that are sitting in America right now. There's probably, there's very few on the ground that they have to get moved loaded. So it's still a small industry.
So that's really one of the reasons I moved here. It's obviously the opportunity. And the big thing I've noticed here in the States is even if you have an idea that is so niche, it's only a fraction of the market, with the scale that America's at with its population, wealth, and just the amount of businesses, even that tiny niche can be still a huge market, especially relative to a small country like New Zealand. So even, a small niche here can be the same size or bigger than a big industry in New Zealand. So would you say you have much competition in that?
No, we're probably in the trucking, the moving heavy containers on ground level. We probably don't have any competition in our areas. I mean, there's guys with other trucks in other areas doing what we do. So we don't have very much competition in that. We do for the container rentals and sales. That's tight competition because everybody's into that in America. That's a huge thing. But no, the trucking, I think we're probably because it's so specialised and there's so many moving parts and they're so hard to keep the trucks and the trailers maintained on the road, and you have to have a specialised driver to do it. The dispatching's not easy, so everything about it is probably quite complex. And I don't think that, like, the big companies are just not interested in getting into that many business with that many moving parts, so they probably they stay out of it. So it's just more like the smaller guys that are owner operators that do well at it. Yeah.
And so do you service the entire United States? Do you do everywhere?
We have trucks stationed in Nashville and in Dallas, but we will go anywhere if someone wants to pay enough money. But after a while, if we have to go more than a day, if we're traveling more than a day, it's probably we're not probably a cost-effective option anymore. So as long as we can get it done within a day, we're pretty cost-effective. But once we start spending the night out in hotels and everything else, we're not a cost-effective option anymore.
That makes sense. And I've got quite a few questions around your business and the challenges of it, especially as sort of how unique it is. But I do want to quickly jump back to, I guess, your journey and how it started. So you came here, and how did you actually get your start with, I guess, starting this business up? I mean, I presume you had to pour significant capital in to get the trucks and the arms initially and to just get it off the ground. So did you do market research? Did you have partners? What did that process look like?
Yeah, we had partners, and we probably did our market research as more driving around and looking at all the containers on the ground and talking to people. But once again, I don't think we actually knew if it would work or not. And it's really hard to know if something's going to work without just doing it, in my opinion. You can hypothesize all you want, but until you actually show up with a truck and move the container, no one's probably going to believe you can do it. So I think we threw just like a small amount of capital each and borrowed some money to buy the first truck. And then after that, I think we got a couple of small loans to get us capitalised. But we were definitely undercapitalised in the beginning. We had pretty old, raggedy equipment. The first truck was new, but after that, the side loaders we brought after that to get to the next level, the two used ones, they were definitely old, raggedy equipment and older trucks. So we're definitely undercapitalised, I'd say, for the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years. It was a struggle.
10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
But once we got rolling, it became a lot easier, I'd say. But we took out some pretty good sized loans in the beginning. Had to pay all them back.
So you're just banking this will work out and there'll be the market for it?
Yeah, rolling the dice. I mean, I think I could tell. I could probably tell after we got them two big trailers on the road and we're moving a lot of 40-foot containers. I could kind of tell then that there's people that really wanted the service. So I was pretty confident after that. But I'd say before that it was probably definitely a risk, But I was probably young enough then. I had a lot of energy too, and I wasn't. If you told me to do it again now, I'd probably be like, I don't know if I want to take that gamble again. But yeah, I definitely probably was a lot braver back then. Give everything a go, and I had a ton of energy to drive a truck all day and fix it all night and be making phone calls to customers. We did a lot of work in the beginning.
So how many people was it? Was it you and just one partner?
Yeah, it was us and a partner for the first. I'm not sure how long we had the partners for. I think he had a family problem, so he had to get out of it about. I think it was about a year into it that he got out of it, and he was more of the manufacturing side probably than the service side. So yeah, he got out of it about a year, and then it was just me, and I think we had a couple of truck drivers to begin with, or one truck driver, and then we just kind of slowly built up from there. Got someone in the office finally to answer the phone. Kept on fixing all the trucks myself for years, and then we kind of morphed into a container company, and then started selling containers, renting containers, and that was probably an interesting transition, because we were in the beginning we were moving other rental companies' containers, so all these big companies would move their containers for them. I think we figured out pretty quickly that they were just using us to move them, and they'd mark our services up, and that they weren't doing anything that we couldn't do ourselves. Like, they were renting and selling the containers, they were making all the money, we were doing all the work, which I'm kind of anti that. If I want to do the work, I want to make the money. so then we started doing everything. We'd buy the containers, sell the container, rent them, do the modifications. So we kind of went to a full service container company, which is where we are today. But in between all that, we had, in 2016, we did sell off all our rental containers in Dallas into the Texas market, and we just went back to being a trucking company. And then I think it was like 17 or 18, we started working in Nashville. We took a truck up there, and we took one truck to Nashville and just started doing trucking work for a little while. We'd leave the truck parked there, fly up there, work for a couple of days, get some more business, fly up there again a couple of weeks later, do all that business. So we just kind of slowly built that market up with one truck. And then once again, you don't plan on it, but you start just morphing into the container sales and rental business, and it got bigger and bigger in Nashville. So now I think we have 3 trucks in Nashville and quite a few containers. We have our own yard, we have our own construction crew there, office people. So we have a full location in Nashville, and then a full location in Texas for container rentals and sales too.
So you also, from what I saw on your website, you also do container like fit outs and customizations.
Yeah, modifications, yeah.
So who's your customer base for that?
It's probably pretty much always, once again, it's the construction companies or the big industrial companies that use containers in the aftermarket. And then we make offices for any kind of construction company, anyone that wants a field office on the ground. And it's not, I wouldn't say We don't do any like really high end modifications. We do the pretty basics like doors, windows, air conditioners, electrical, insulation. So it's nothing complex. It's just making a container more probably more usable for someone in the aftermarket than it is.
Have you done anything with like container homes?
We have built 3 container homes. I think was it 3? Yeah, we built 3 container homes for a charity in Dallas one time, in downtown Dallas.
What I see with these container homes is, like, every few years they seem to trend, and then people sort of go towards it. You see it in the media, rising house costs, we're going to combat it with container houses, and then you seem to just see that die down, and then a few years later it comes again. So, I mean, do you think there's a future in that?
I mean, they call it the tiny home market, which is it is quite a big thing in the States. I think with the cost of housing, a lot of people have tried to find an alternative, so they build these tiny houses. I think for mainstream, you'd be pretty hard pushed to find an American woman that's married to live in a small box like that. You might find some people, but not many that I know. So I think it's awesome for like for hunting leases and stuff like that. It's temporary out in the country. It's probably there's a great use of a container for that, or for college campuses. They stack them up. When it's just maybe one college kid, they don't mind. They can sleep somewhere with hung over in a 7-foot box. They don't care about it. But to my way of thinking, as soon as you cut the container in half and you take away from its structural integrity, then you have to make it wider, to make it a usable living space where it's wider than, say, 8 feet. As soon as you get rid of or you cut it up and the structural integrity is gone, you have to do so much reinforcing to fix it. You should have just built it out of construction, like regular construction methods. That's what I think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you can keep it in the configuration of a container, it's definitely it's a very solid tiny house to live in. But there's all the engineering problems that come along with that too. So if you go to get a building permit for a shipping container, the engineer's probably not going to know what you're talking about. So you have to go right through an engineering process. So that once again you're probably better off building with sticks and stones and getting an engineer to try and figure out how strong a shipping container is.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for the dystopian future where we're all living in 10 feet stacked containers because no one can afford housing.
There's been quite a few good ideas out there. When you see a lot of people that have done them in like pretty cool modular ways, but I still think it's going to be a pretty hard sell for most American people to live in a space that small.
Oh, that makes sense. And then, as you mentioned, if you try to expand on it and modify it, then you start competing with actually just, how much does it cost to build it traditionally? Yeah,
it's like a shoebox. As soon as you cut the side out of it, it collapses. Like the strength of a container, a lot of it is in the corrugation down the side of it. So if you cut the corrugation out, then you've got to reinforce it. So then you kind of wasted your time. In my opinion, I might be wrong, but I've tried to do it a couple of times and it's never been super successful.
So with the trucking being somewhat of a niche, and you said you reckon there's a limited sort of market cap on it, on the demand for, containers being moved and transported the way you guys do it, are you currently sort of veering more towards the container rental and modifications and trying to build that business? I mean, where currently is your focus at?
I think we probably are focused a bit more towards sales and rentals, but we've always tried to keep the 3 sources of income: transport, rental, sales. If there's a downturn in the economy, one of them will be down, the other one will be up. So I think to be kind of recession proof for us, we try and keep all 3 of them going. We probably have laxed off in the trucking a little bit in the last couple of years, but we're getting a bit more, or trying to do more on the trucking again now. But I think we'll always be in trucking. We can't. It's a necessary evil. If you're in the container business, you have to have trucks to deliver the containers. So there's no getting around that.
So you'd say, because I guess your business has sort of 3 branches. You've got the transport, the rental, and then the the container fit outs and modifications.
Yeah.
So you would say they all complement each other. They're all crucial pillars in holding everything together.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely are. And just a straight out sales of containers too. Like sometimes we'll just buy a container. Someone wants to buy it. We'll buy it wholesale, and someone wants to buy one retail. So we have it in their yard. They come look at it. We sell it to them. We deliver it. So like that, the whole modifications, sales, rental, and transport. I think it probably all fits together pretty well. We've tried other things that probably out of our realm of expertise that have not worked so well. So we always seem to try something else, dip our toes in it, try it. If we get burnt, we come running back to what we're good at, which is moving containers. I think that really is what we're good at. We're good at moving containers. So.
Do you have any sort of highlights on some of the things you tried and possibly didn't quite work out?
Yeah, I think bathrooms would be one of my biggest failures. making bathrooms out of containers and renting them to people.
So is that like at sporting events and that sort of
Yeah,
places?
yeah. The whole thing was was not. We definitely failed at that. It's not a good. I'm not good at bathrooms.
Why?
It's probably getting rid of what's in the bathroom that was that was my downfall. But yeah, no, it's kind of it probably seems like a pretty simple add-on, but there's a lot more to that business and probably meets the eye.
I presume if you did bathroom stuff, you probably had to get different, like you had to find different tradespeople, and there was...
Yeah, and there's different licensing and permitting and all kinds of stuff, so leave the bathrooms to the bathroom people.
Now, I know this is going to be a slight side tangent, but one of my big pet peeves here is public bathrooms and stall gaps. I presume you've noticed that.
Yeah.
You can make direct eye contact with people walking in.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Have you been to Bucky's?
Bucky's I love.
Yeah.
But they're the exception. They're the only ones I've seen here doing it right.
Yeah, I'll drive an extra 50 miles to get to a Bucky's. I'll hold on. Yeah. No, the bathrooms here are pretty, they're pretty basic, aren't they?
No, but it's just there's that 1 inch. Are they just missing that 1 inch of material? How much does that cost?
Or even underneath the stall, mate. Sometimes there's a foot underneath there.
Oh yeah, that annoys me too. That the big door panels and gaps are what get to me.
Yeah, no, it's pretty definitely pretty rough. You go to a truck stop in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, go to a truck stop bathroom. It's pretty rough.
And truckers, from what I remember, they can't use. Can you use Bucky's if you're driving?
No, you can't. Yeah, no, you can't use Bucky's.
So where do you have to go?
Oh, just the regular truck stops. You know, the Loves and all the regular truck stops. But if you go in there at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's definitely it's interesting sometimes.
I presume those truck stops are no Bucky's.
No, they're not Bucky's. No, definitely no Bucky's. But yeah, I think there's the bathroom market now. There is like a pretty big push. They call them luxury bathrooms, and you'll see them on these like really nice trailers, and they pull them up to job sites. So you can rent luxury bathrooms here now that are pretty nice. But I think they have different levels for everything. Like you go to a construction site and there might be a set of bathrooms for the managers and the engineers, but then the guys that are working out there, they're in the portalets, which are pretty rough. It's definitely I think it's just the volume probably. You've got so many people on a job site, you might have 1,500 people, so they've got to use a bathroom somewhere.
That makes sense. The managers and the executives. Yeah,
they're in one set and the rest of us are in somewhere else.
And I guess, has there been anything else you've attempted? It's sort of gone a bit sideways?
What else we tried that's gone sideways? We tried canopies. They worked good for us, but we probably haven't been super successful at that, putting canopies over containers. There's probably a few other things I've tried that I probably don't want to talk about.
Oh, good.
I'll keep my failures to myself, but there's been a few.
No, but I mean that's all part of business. Yeah. I don't think there's many people.
I don't think I'm normally pretty smart about if I try something, I'll try it on a very small scale to begin with, so I don't have very much to lose. So I'll try it at a very small level, and if I'm not good at it, I'd back out of it pretty quick. Because I don't think you can be good at everything. You know, even even the containers. I think we're probably really good at trucking, but it took us a while to get good at the rental and the sales and the modifications. It takes a while to get good at that. So you can't be jack of all trades.
And so, how many employees do you have, like roughly?
I think we have about 20 now altogether.
20. And so how hard has that been managing and coming up, I guess, with the processes? Because, your business is broken up into 3 branches. How much challenges have you had with bringing in staff? Obviously, some of the business is all new, doesn't exist really anywhere else in the States. So I presume, do you have a training process that you sort of come up with? What are the big challenges you face there?
Yeah, so I think we have got our processes down a lot better now than we used to in the beginning. And we've always probably had a core. I've had a core of like really good people that have stuck with me for years. So they've helped train new people that we've hired. But we're probably not as good at that as we should be, to be honest. I think I've probably tried harder in the last year. I've had my son-in-law Keith work with us, and he's a lot more process oriented than me, and he puts a lot more time and effort into it. And I can probably see the results of that, to be honest, which I've never been. It's probably not my specialty. To do that, it wasn't my specialty to do that stuff, but we're definitely getting better at it. But the core people that I've had that have stuck with me for a long time, they've helped train the new people that have come on. And I would say a lot of people don't, especially the drivers, they're either gonna make it or they're not. So it's quite probably quite a challenging job for a driver. So if they come along and you can tell within a couple of weeks they're going to be like, no, this is not for me, or we're going to be like, no, this is not for you. So if they stick with us, they stick with us forever. But if they don't, it's pretty obvious from pretty early on.
So how long does it take to train someone to operate the cranes as well on the trucks and to learn that system and to, I guess, get their head around that?
I would say we can probably train someone to be able to operate it probably within a couple of weeks, and maybe within a month he's driving it himself, but probably to be like very proficient at it and good at it in all situations. I think it probably almost takes 6 months or a year for them to see every situation. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years and I still see situations I've got to think about, so it's not, it's never the same job twice. So very rarely we're going back and forward. Almost every job we do is a new learning curve. Like every job site's different, or we might have taken to the job site and it was a piece of bare land with dirt, and then a year later we come back to pick it up and they've built a building around it and they've got crap all the way around it. So it's never the same thing twice. So it's the drivers have to be kind of self-motivated to think on their feet and come up with solutions. They can't just roll up there and think it's going to happen. It's going to be easy.
So it's a lot of critical problem solving then.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's probably the hardest thing about it, I think, is the fact that every job's different. So there's no, you can train them how to operate the truck, but then the next job they pull up to is going to be a different scenario. So they're going to think their way through that. So some people, I think, really like that sort of work.
Sorry, I just.
Oops, sorry.
That bit. There you go.
Yeah, I think some people really like that sort of work, and others despise it. So we just got to find the right people that like it.
So, I don't know what sort of point you're at your business journey. If you're still really focused on scale and growing things, but where do you see your big bottlenecks?
Yeah, I would say maybe I'm the bottleneck, probably. I'm probably good at doing stuff on a small scale, but yeah, I think to scale it properly, you have to have maybe a different mentality to me. From I see all these other entrepreneurs that get things. We're probably good at like 1 or 2 locations, but to get it to if we wanted to be 50 locations and maybe 100 trucks, it'd probably take a different set of skills than what I've got, to be honest. It's just not my specialty. I'm a hands-on guy working in the field. So I think the bottleneck is me. If you got rid of me, it might get bigger.
So what does your day-to-day look like?
For me, well, anything probably from cleaning the toilet to an executive decision. driving a truck, fixing a truck, selling a container, welding a door in, talking with the employees. I've tried to get more. My focus is probably in the last year has been more towards training the employees and becoming more efficient at what we do. That's what I'm really trying to get better at. But it's probably not. It doesn't come to me naturally. Just like these podcasts, some things I'm damn awkward with, and I think training is one of them. I've seen people. I've hired people here and watched them train someone, and I'm in awe of how patient they are when it comes to training someone. Because when I train someone, I show them and I expect them to know it pretty quick. I'm probably impatient as hell. So yeah, I think training. I've got better at really trying to be patient with training people. And it's surprising. I'm probably too old to do it again. But if I had another lifetime to do it, I think I'd do things a lot differently this time. As far as taking my time and training people properly. When obviously in New Zealand, we never got, the way I was educated, we never got trained in that. I never went to that level where you'd learn how to be a manager. You're a mechanic, you worked on stuff. So I probably was never taught how to be a good trainer. But I have watched people that are great trainers, and it's quite impressive that they can get someone to do what they want them to do consistently. I actually have one guy that I learned a lot of who worked for us in Justin, and he would go. His theory was, if you made a mistake, you stop in your tracks, and you don't do anything else until you put something in place where that mistake will never happen again.
Okay, that's a good philosophy.
It was good philosophy, and it drove me friggin' nuts for probably a year. I was about to kill the guy. I was like, this dude is so slow, what the hell? But after a year, you could see he had very few things that were slowing him down anymore, because he would fix them as they happened. So I learned a lot of that guy, just the way he managed. And he was never rushed. He was like always pretty calm, whereas I'm all over the page. If I see a fire burning, I think I've got to put it out right now, and sometimes that's probably not the best way.
No, those are very wise words.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's something I 100% agree with. I think from what I've sort of learned in my very limited lifetime, admittedly, is if you want to get better at something, the best way is just by doing it. And I've noticed, I have my YouTube channel where I do my videos. I've been doing that now for years, and initially it was very hard being in front of the camera and trying to present, and then with over time you get better at it. But then I also did public speaking, and I realized that there is a completely different skill, and then that is also a completely different skill from pitching, like in a business environment where you've met someone. You've got that 60 seconds, that elevator pitch to get across, what is it I'm selling, what is it I'm doing, how can I help you, sort of thing. And then, podcast is now a new medium that I'm giving a go. And again, this is a completely different situation that I need a lot more practice in. Because, interviewing people and focusing on, obviously there's the hardware and the setup, and you have to be watching that, but also just having a conversation when it's being recorded, and knowing what you're saying is going to be on the internet. Like there's at least for me, I feel like there's a psychological thing that sort of appears where if you're talking with your mates or whatever, it's easier because that you don't have to be 100% factual. You don't have to worry about being necessarily correct all the time. And there's you can give it another go, and mistakes don't matter. But here it's sort of going online. I feel like that's a lot more pressure, and I think it's another skill I need to now learn.
Yeah, no, me too. Probably might be too late for me, but it's definitely it's not something we learned, especially not my generation. Like we weren't even taking pictures of each other. We were like, if you made a mistake and made a fool of yourself, only the people that were standing around you knew that you were an idiot at the time. And most of them were drunk, so they forgot about it. So you always had an out, but with this sort of stuff, you're right, it's recorded. All the stuff that kids do nowadays, it's all recorded. So it's a different level of pressure.
No, I agree.
I'd kind of I think the public speaking and these podcasts and everything, that's definitely out of my comfort zone. It's not something I'm good at.
Isn't it strange that podcasts are now sort of making a big comeback? Like, since COVID, I feel podcasts have become almost like the big new medium. And ironically, the second big medium is these like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, where you've got your 60-second videos. So you almost have your two extremes. You've got your super short attention span content, and then you've got like these 3-4 hour podcasts, and both of them seem to have exploded in the last sort of 3-4 years.
Well, I mean, and it's all to me, it's all quite surprising. Like the TikTok thing, everybody watches that thing. Doesn't seem to matter what age you are, you'll see people watching TikTok. And what were you telling me the other day about the viewership for Joe Rogan and them guys compared to?
It's huge. I mean, I don't know the exact figures. I don't want to talk shit. But I think it's something like all of the big networks like CNN, NBC, and those like Joe Rogan. Each podcast gets probably 10 times the viewership, something like that, like crazy numbers in each podcast.
Yeah. So you would have never have believed that 10, 20 years ago, that you would have gone, there's no way.
No, not at all.
But it's happening for sure.
Because to me, podcast seems to be just like radio almost just reinvented a little.
Yeah.
Like a lot of podcasts, I mean, we're doing video here, but a lot of podcasts are purely audio. And a lot of them, I think, mirror traditional radio in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I felt like that died off, and now it's suddenly back.
Yeah. I think probably it gives a lot of people that don't have a voice too. Like anyone can get on there nowadays and make a video, and their specific group of people, doesn't matter what they're doing, if they've got a specific group of people that are into whatever they're doing, they can be seen and heard. Whereas that back in the day, that was never going to happen. You'd never get online, or no one's ever going to see you. So I think it's pretty cool. It's really cool, I think, for learning too. Like our generation probably kind of hoarded the knowledge. People would, like, if they were good at something, they would hoard the knowledge. Whereas now, if you're good at something, the younger generation's sharing the knowledge, so everyone gets to use it. You can find a way to do anything if you want to. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, same. I mean, there are like TikTok and YouTube Shorts accounts which are just simply about people sharing what they do, and it's just their day-to-day job, whether they are running an ice cream shop or a tyre repair place. So, they're just filming what they do, and people find that interesting.
Yeah,
and I think that's become a very unique way of I guess giving a perspective into what other people do. And then I think podcasts are also great because I feel like it puts people in a different light, and it allows you to understand much better who they are. Because if you do an interview, it's very cut together. Normally it's like 5 to 10 minutes, and they've got limited segment space, so they have to get everything down.
Yeah.
And normally it's a very, very formal, very strict environment where the other person is probably on ease. Whereas podcasts, it's a 3-hour thing. You, I think, get to know the person a lot more. You get to relate to them a lot more, and they get to also explain themselves much, much better.
Yeah.
There is no time restraint. It isn't such a corporate
it's just
tension.
Like a long chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of people, and I think that's why, for example, Joe Rogan, a lot of these big podcasters are so big, because I think it gives not just celebrities, but just people in their niches a voice, and it also just shows them in a different light. I guess it like humanizes them maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Because I think that's sort of missed through like your traditional media.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think even the advertisers now, I think a lot of people actually look at someone who is like using the product. If you see a TikTok video, we've all seen the perfectly done advertisement from the big company. You're like, they're full of crap because they're telling you whatever their marketing pitch is. But if you're actually looking online at someone that's using it and promoting it and saying, this is how I work with it and it worked well, I'd be a lot more likely to buy that product when I see some everyday guy using it online rather than a pitch from some marketing company, you know. So
Oh yeah, and some of them are super clever. Like some of them, I get to the end of the video and then they go, use my code and and I go, oh shit, I just watched a 60-second ad.
Yeah.
And didn't even realise. So yeah, some of them are very, very well done.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there's some people that are pushing products that would never ever got paid before that are making money off it now, because they've got a good following on TikTok or whatever they're on. So I think the other thing that really surprised me with it, like the presidential election, was when Trump actually was on a podcast with Theo Vaughn. Is it Theo Vaughn?
Yes, Theo Vaughn.
I would have never ever thought in a million years that would happen, that a president would go on a podcast with some guy who's like, I mean, he's funny as hell to me. I love the guy. He's hilarious, but
he's not who you'd think is a traditional presenter,
no,
especially interviewing the president.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Which I guess it shows probably shows how old I am, because I guess the younger generation's watching Theo Vaughn, so they're going to see Trump on there, but I would have never have. That surprised the hell out of me, but maybe I'm old and grumpy.
No, I think it surprised a lot of people, especially. I also feel like when I watch one of the things that frustrates me. I'll use the word frustrating about the mainstream media is it's always the same questions, it's always the same topics, it's always the same sort of rhetoric. I never feel like I generally get the answers that I actually want to hear. And part of that is just the format. It's a 5 to 10 minute video. They've got like 30 questions they want to get in. They also want to get their clickbait titles. So, the interviewer is also trying to play the guest, and generally the guest, I think, is very on defense as well, because they have to be figuring out, how do I articulate myself and dodge these questions and see the traps and all this. So with podcasts, you don't, I think that there's a lot less of that, because it's a much longer medium where you can explain yourself. And I think Trump possibly is like the first president, I think, who really utilized social media, podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, his when he went on, Joe Rogan practically, I feel like, carried the Republican campaign, because in 1 week he had J.D. Vance, Trump, Elon Musk. He had all three on in the span of a week. So I honestly think that gave like the push.
The push,
yeah. Because I think there's a lot of people who are on edge, who really not sure on who to vote for. Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing, I think it surprised me completely. And I mean, I'm definitely Republican leaning, but just from watching, from what I've seen in the media and just people you talk to and the way things are going, I thought it would have been very tight. But the Americans will always surprise you in an election. I'll say that. They, I don't know, anyone actually, quite a few times since I've been here, I've watched elections, and I thought I would think I know what way it's going, and it's gone the other way. So don't underestimate the voting public, which is, I think it's one of the good things about America. Like Americans will do what the hell they want to do, not what it's kind of hard to push them in a direction they don't want to go.
Well, so again, this might be a little hard for American viewers, but like being in New Zealand, you constantly hear about American politics and drama, because we have like CNN, and those are the big outlets for America. So that's what we're shown. So I would also say we're shown a very warped perspective, because we're only seeing one side, which is generally the Democrats.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know, I guess that's, that just happens to be what we're shown. And I think most of the networks here, mainstream networks, seem to be very Democrat run. So that's what we see in New Zealand. And I just never got it. I was like, God, and everyone around me was always like, it's America again. It's all weird. No one really understood it. And coming here, I still don't really understand it, but it's so interesting and fascinating, especially actually living here and seeing how this election looked like.
Yeah.
And, people, I don't think they fully understand. Like here in America, the election cycle seems to be almost 2 years. There is so much build up to it. There is so much drama. I mean, just the recent one, there were assassinations attempts. There were a bunch of indictments and like all things that have never really, I think, happened in this way. And
Yeah.
maybe in history, and seeing it all happen live, it was like reality TV on steroids. It was insane watching it happen in front of me.
Yeah. I think it's a big country, so there's, was it like 290 million people in America, and the only ones you hear from are probably the 1% on each side. They're the ones that make all the noise. So the way I look at it is, you've got the 1%, or maybe the very small percent to the left and the right that are making all the noise, but you've got all the people in the middle that are, they're not making any noise, you're not hearing from. That's a lot of people, and most of them people, to my way of thinking, are pretty down-to-earth, normal people that are just wanting to, have a good life for their family, makes money, work hard. They're all like good, normal people. So the only thing you hear about in the news are the extremists.
No, I agree.
So when you get overseas, and I notice that when I go back to New Zealand, people think that everybody here is crazy, but there's only probably 1% of them that are crazy. The rest of them are
I completely agree.
Completely normal. So,
and I feel like in countries like New Zealand, I would say most, at least first world countries, all your European countries and Australia and all that, their politics, it's, the political climate is like 2 months. That's the entire election cycle. It's very short, and everything is much more, I think, maybe central leaning. It's closer to the centre. It's not. There aren't anywhere near as much like dividing issues. Whereas here, I feel like there's a lot of dividing issues where it's super polarised. Whereas in New Zealand, it's like, oh, we got them in, cool, moving on. Whereas here, it's a much bigger thing. And I feel like the consequence of who you get in is also much bigger, especially with America being the biggest economy in the world.
Yeah. Americans are quite they're quite opinionated. Like they'll take a side, and they're not afraid to take a side and tell you what side they're on. Whereas in New Zealand or Australia, if you're on the side, a lot of people just go quiet, or they don't say anything about it. They might have their opinion, but they'll keep it to themselves. But I think here, people are going to, they're taught from a very young age to stand up for what you think and don't back down. So that's probably a big percent of the voting population too. That are like,
I agree.
I've got an opinion and I'm going to voice it.
But I think in New Zealand there are just a lot of people who genuinely just don't care that much. They're focused on just their own things. They look at the media once or twice, and that's sort of them. They're just content. They don't really care. But on the other hand, I also feel like there isn't anywhere near as much going on politically to try and keep track of. Like, if you want to genuinely keep track of every single major event that's happening in politics, it's like a full-time investment that you'd have to be making. And I think because so many issues here are so polarised, meaning people either love the idea or hate it, against it, for it, there is huge division between Democrat and Republican, and there seem to really only be two parties here, because independents don't seem to win, so it seems to be a two-party system.
Yeah, definitely is.
And I think because of that, each side will try and use the extremists on the other side to try and showcase why their side's better. So I think like a lot of those big mainstream media companies, they'll show articles and things that seem absurd because they are interviewing or targeting the extremists, so the extreme left or the extreme right, and they're doing that to try and, I guess, create more division and to try and show, this is why the Democrats are better. Look at these crazy things Republicans are doing, or vice versa. But like you said, they seem to only be representing the extremists, that 1%.
Yeah.
Whereas I think 99% of people are not what is actually represented in media.
Yeah. No, I think that's the big thing probably that people overseas don't understand about America. There's a lot of normal people in the middle, like a lot of them that are just like every other country in the world. They're just normal people with their families trying to make a good living, and I think they all probably I think they probably vote on the issues, but I think probably most people vote with their checkbook, to be honest. Like whatever's, I think that would probably be the big to my way of thinking, when you talk to people, they vote with what's going to be the best for their pocketbook, probably.
Here in the States, you mean?
Yeah, in the States, I think, yeah. I mean, there might be some issues that they get kind of, some people may vote on, but I think a lot of it is just the economy and like looking to the future, what's going to happen with their families, and that comes down to immigration, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's an interesting place politically, and then very interesting, I think, with the fact that you can never really tell what way it's going to go in the elections.
And I think especially here, again, I don't think especially mainstream media is particularly truthful, and I think they've got very clear narratives. So I don't feel like I've ever been further than the truth since moving here. As in, I don't think much of what the mainstream media says on either side is particularly factual. Most of it seems to be they've got their agendas. They will do whatever, they will cherry pick whatever stories they can find to try and match that narrative that they've painted.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the full picture looks like, what the exact motivation behind that is, but I presume it's political. There's two parties, and each of the parties want to be the one to win.
Yeah.
And they'll go quite far to try and make that happen.
I think nowadays, like you were saying before, though, these all the younger generations coming through now, so that they're all watching stuff like this, and they've got access to a lot more information from a lot of different places, and you would have had, say, in the 80s or 90s. Back then, you were stuck with watching the news. So I think this sort of stuff, and TikTok and Facebook and all that kind of stuff gives you access to a lot of different opinions and other people's views. So I think it's good for the younger generation.
Oh, 100%. I think podcasts also get to show that things are not black and white. And it gives people an opportunity to explain themselves and actually give people an insight into what that specific industry looks like. And that's not just talking politics, that's just talking about in general. I think it helps, even if it's not educate people, but at least show their perspective. And that gets the wheels thinking, I think. And I think that's the most important thing. If you want like a growth mindset, it's seeing the other perspectives, and then that gives you context, and then that allows you to start using critical thinking and coming up with your own thoughts and your own and I think that's super important. And I think podcasts help with like training the brain and seeing new perspectives and having a deeper understanding of things. But with these podcasts and especially YouTube Shorts, I think this is more relevant to YouTube Shorts and videos. I think there's a lot of pro benefits, like, what we discussed, but I think there's also cons, which is the companies control the algorithms, and the algorithms are all about getting you hooked and getting you watching as much content as you possibly can, so you can see more ads and they make more money. But I think by doing that, a lot of people might find themselves in almost like an echo chamber, where they pick to choose things that don't necessarily challenge their views, but more rather reaffirm what they believe. Because, that's comfortable. That's what I think most people are after. We want to reaffirm our beliefs, whereas that's not necessarily always the best thing. And then that algorithm is then finding, okay, you believe this, so I'm going to keep cranking out videos that reaffirm all these beliefs. And even if your initial belief is, let's say hypothetically it's quite an extremist view, the fact that you're getting all of this content recommendation, even if that's such a niche thing, there's still enough content that's coming and being recommended to you that you can, I think, get into situations where you feel like that's actually reality and that's what everyone thinks. Whereas you're actually just stuck in a very small niche in a very small bubble.
I can tell when you start watching that stuff. Whatever you start watching, if you start watching people doing dumb stuff on a truck, it'll just keep on sending more and more to you. So
and same with political beliefs and ideas, and everyone has their biases, obviously. But I think you probably have. I think that's the big thing. You have to be careful not to be trapped in an echo chamber. To try and get your news from different sources and to try and balance it out. Because I think it's very easy to get sucked into that isolated...
I can see that actually.
Thinking that my views are correct because I see all of these other content creators agreeing with it, even if those content creators are representing a very small niche of reality. And I also think then, and this is sort of like another level on top of that, but I also think companies potentially alter their algorithms to better fit their political biases as well. And that's also something I think that's important to keep in mind.
So how do you stop that happening to you? Start looking at the other side?
Yeah, I mean, what I personally do is I try and look at. So I look at mainstream media. I try to watch CNN and the really left-leaning stuff, despite I'm not particularly. I'd say I'm more central. I then try and look at the right, which is your Fox News and that sort of thing. I keep it minimal, but I try and look at those. I then try and listen to, whenever something comes up, I try and listen to the person. So if they've done a podcast or whatever, I try and listen to that, where you get a full understanding of their side of the story. And then I try and look at other independent journalists and creators.
Yeah.
So I try and get my news from as many points as possible. And I'm really big into politics. It's a big hobby of mine. And what I do actually as well is I have GPT and I use it for everything. Now, I don't necessarily recommend you get your news from it because it does have a lot of biases and it is often wrong. But I think what it's great at is challenging your beliefs. So if you tell it, I have this belief, argue it, try and poke as many holes into it as you can.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a great way to actually figure out, where on the scale of truth is my beliefs.
Oh, yeah. So you can ask ChatGPT that.
Yeah, and it challenges you.
Yeah.
And it brings up, it goes, I agree with your point or I disagree. This is why. These are other popular opinions that contradict what you believe, and then that really gets your brain thinking.
That's a good idea.
So I think that's what I do a lot. I guess it's a bit of a weird hobby, just talking to GPT about politics, but it's
a good idea though.
Yeah, it's a great way to explore new perspectives and to at least see where other people's views are coming from.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to try that then. I learnt something today on my first podcast.
I don't know if others do it, but I do recommend it for people. Wow, that was a bit of a veer off.
Yeah, I know. We're veered off the trucking business there.
I'll
be running for president pretty soon.
I'll go back to it. Something I was curious about, and this is actually probably overlapping with politics again, but COVID. And I bring this up because I feel like different countries were affected differently, and every country handled it differently. And you're in America through the period.
Yeah.
So how did you find it? How was it? Did it impact your business much?
No, it probably didn't impact our business from a volume and a sales perspective. I think we've got busier, if anything. So the day-to-day life for me didn't change at all. We went to work every day. We didn't get locked down. The traffic was awesome. There was no traffic on the road, so it made it a lot faster to get our jobs done. So for someone like me that's just in a working class job that was deemed necessary, I think it was my day-to-day life was almost uninterrupted. For people that were in other sorts of professions, it probably did, like, it affected a lot of people, I think, that were like government workers or people that were in big buildings with a lot of people. They kind of shut them down. The supply chain, it didn't in the beginning, but then towards the end of it, it was definitely, there was materials we couldn't get that we used to be able to get before, and everything got extremely expensive. The shipping become ridiculous on the container shipments from overseas become ridiculous. Access to parts that we needed, sometimes we just couldn't get parts. We always could in the past, and it's probably gone right through until just, I'd say within the last year maybe, it's become a lot. Everything's been available again, but it seemed like it bloody kept on going for a long time. The supply chain was messed up. But no, I think America was pretty good about. Once again, they're Americans, so you can tell them to stay at home, but they're probably not going to do it unless they think it's right. So people here, I would say they don't. Yeah, they're probably harder to control. On not like Australia and New Zealand, people, the government told them to stay at home and do as they're told. They probably did it, but here, people just, if they wanted to go do something, they went and done it. So I would say it was nowhere near as hard on us as it was on some other countries, to be honest, from a day-to-day perspective.
So did it make you in any way rethink your business processes, like going forward after COVID? You changed the way you do things, or the things I guess, did it change your business going forward in any way? Or did you just guys have it right the first time?
Like I think once again because we had them like 3 or 4 different income sources. So during COVID, I think we did a lot more trucking. For some reason, we had a lot of trucking jobs because I guess some other companies weren't working. So that picked up. But no, it never really, honestly, it didn't change our perspective on how we were going to, or what kind of business we're going to do. It might have changed our thoughts a little bit on how we, like inventory parts and materials. We definitely got a bit of a shock on that. So we inventory a lot more materials now than we used to because we've never, ever in the past in America had to worry about getting something. In the past, if you had the money, you could get it pretty much. So I think that's probably the first time for a lot of people that have actually been sitting there with the money and you still can't buy it. Doesn't matter how much money you got. So that did probably change our perspective a little bit. But no, in general, I think we just that was a very weird time though. To be honest, it was when that COVID first hit, it was. I think everybody was shaking their head, wondering what was going to happen.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I was in New Zealand through the entire thing, and my parents had a business, a haircut shop. It was a good sized business. I think there was about 10 employees. So we definitely saw the impacts of both, on people, on what learning was like. So I was in high school, and also what it was like for small businesses as well. And I like New Zealand, and I praise it for a lot of things they do. But COVID was something that I think they went well and truly overboard with. That for context, for people who don't know what New Zealand, what it was like. But basically, they locked the country down initially for a 2-month period, which I think was possibly an okay move, given New Zealand, it's an island, it's easy enough to shut down while they assess the situation. But after that, when other countries started to loosen up a little, New Zealand continued with the very strict nature where businesses had to be closed. There was basically nothing coming in or out of the country, so prices skyrocketed for a lot of items. It was super hard, buying things. It was very hard on small businesses who had to come up with a way to continue paying their rent, their utilities, their fixed costs, despite not being allowed to operate. And some of the lockdowns, because we had multiple big ones, the government actually required businesses to either lay off employees or pay them 80% of their salary. I think that was it. And that's out of pocket, and the business was expected to, God knows where to get that money from. Luckily, we were lucky, and the haircut shop that we had, where I also worked, I was a barber there too, we always kept quite a bit of capital in the business, for a rainy day. So thank God we didn't have to let anyone off, and also with the type of industry we were in, everyone needed haircuts, especially when we kept coming out of those lockdowns.
Yeah.
So honestly, business sort of, I would say, did better for us than normally, just because there were so many people who wanted to get their haircuts quickly because they either attempted it at home or they just let it overgrow. So being in the haircut industry turned out to actually be a pretty stable business.
Even though you had to wear masks everywhere.
Oh, that was brutal, because I had to cut hair with people wearing masks, and that was pain in the ass. And again, media was very locked down, and we were shown pretty much all the media was scaring people, and they weren't letting anything in that wasn't purely their fixed agenda of what they wanted people to believe.
Yeah.
And if you either if you tried to push back, it was either whether you wanted to push back or conform, you were either a conforming communist, or you're an anti-vaxxer, or you were just trying to doom humanity.
Yeah.
Like, that was the baskets people were sort of being put in, who tried to maybe not even fight back, but just go, hey, look, is what we're doing actually right? And questioning things, which I think you should always be questioning things. So that was definitely a low point, I think, for New Zealand, and I think a lot of people were disappointed with that. And it took a very long time for businesses to recover. A lot went under. I knew a lot of the small businesses around us. I knew the owners. I cut their hair, So we talked, and yeah, it was very brutal for a lot of them.
Yeah. Wonder how they'll do it if they had to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, many don't have the opportunity to do it again because they're out of business, unfortunately.
I mean, the country, like with COVID, like if we have another pandemic, what do we learn from this one? Because like in the very beginning, I don't know if they're fair, just trying to make a scare, but it is quite an overwhelming thought that there could be something out there. Like, you remember in the beginning when they were like, even if you touch something, you might be able to catch COVID, because no one really knew how bad it was.
No.
So you didn't know how quick it could transmit or how fast it was going to zoom around the world, and you'd always see these pictures of like these countries that were really bad off. So and I think New Zealand went overboard too, but without really knowing how it's going to go, it is probably quite a hard decision to make.
Yeah, and the other thing, like I mentioned, I feel like media companies were showing the extreme sort of outcomes, where they're showing people who were suffering the most, or countries where it was really bad, and then that got people panicked, whereas in reality, some places had it very bad, some people had it very bad, especially people with pre-existing conditions and things.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily fairly represent your everyday person and what that would look like to them.
Yeah.
There's a lot, there was definitely a lot of scaring going on. And on one hand, like you said, I get it, because if you did get hypothetically a virus like everyone sees on TV and movies, where it is actually a deadly virus that we can't easily overcome, then that could be
and there was
problematic.
People that were getting like very sick and dying from COVID. There's no two ways about that. I think it probably wasn't as hard on people as time went on, but in the beginning there was some people getting like really sick. So there was the fear part of it. Do you go on the side of caution, or do you throw caution to the wind? And I guess
exactly.
I think New Zealand probably was maybe overcautious, but
I think they were. I think initially they were right in what they did. I actually think they should have probably closed down the country earlier, and I only say that because they ended up waiting until we already had a bunch of cases, whereas if they'd have closed it literally a week earlier, we would have had none. And then I think the first lockdown was all right, but then after, I think that was probably enough time to figure out, is this something we should continue with?
And I heard a few reports saying that New Zealand was such a small country, and they were so good at contact tracing and stuff, that it was actually almost like a test kitchen for the rest of the world, because it was so small, they knew where it was coming from. So as it spread, they could actually figure out how it was spreading in New Zealand. Whereas in America, it's so big, and no one does as they're told. You would never be able to figure out actually where it come from.
That's an interesting perspective, and I agree, because in New Zealand, you had to have vaccine cards, you had to scan in every single business you were doing.
Yeah.
The app tracked you, so they knew exactly where, if a COVID case popped up, who was around you. And by the way, I think that was unethical on levels, especially privacy and all of that. Yeah. But I think it did allow them to track down, and you got notifications if you were near people who had it. So I actually think the system they developed wasn't bad, admittedly. If I'm looking at purely objectively to what the software did and what it did, I think it actually was, what New Zealand developed wasn't bad, but I do think certainly they went overboard, and they did not need to lock down the country for what was almost 2 years.
Yeah, and then the people in Auckland, they got completely shafted, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wonder why we want to live there. I reckon I caught it in New Zealand before COVID ever came out, because we were in New Zealand the Christmas before COVID came out. So what did it come out? It first hit us here like in March or something, did it? In February?
Yeah, March. It was around there.
In the States. So when we came back from New Zealand that time, I got off the airplane in Dallas, went straight to Nashville. I wasn't around anybody, and I got to Nashville. I was working by myself, and I got COVID sick, like really sick. Went to the doctor. They said I had some respiratory thing. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I went twice to the doctor, sweating like hell. I mean, I was really sick. Probably took me 2 weeks to come right. But I got checked for the flu, got checked for everything. They're like, we don't know what you got, but you're sick. And it ended up being like, in the end, they're like, you got pneumonia now. So I got over it, but it was exactly the symptoms of COVID, and it was right after we came back from New Zealand. So I'm sure it was just another bug. There's so many viruses out there now, but that's the other thing. I think there's to me it seems like the flus that you get now are like way worse than they ever used to be. You can just get the flu now. It's like, holy hell, I'm like really damn sick from the flu. Whereas back in the day, you get the flu, you'd have you'd have a cough and a cold, but it didn't knock you down. You weren't sweating and losing all your energy and just completely knocking you out like it does nowadays.
Well, I got influenza, I think it's called. It's one of the variants of the flu, and that knocked me out for a good 3 weeks. I then also had COVID twice, and I was fine. I had a runny nose. I lost my taste. That was a very weird experience, eating chips and things and not tasting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thankfully I was all right. But I do know that some people have very bad reactions, and others just brushed it off.
Yeah, I know. It is that COVID's kind of weird. And I've had it twice too since then. I think twice. Yeah, I think I've been diagnosed twice. I think I only really had it once, but the second time I got it, I was actually pretty sick too. The first time they said I had it, I don't even know if I had it because I wasn't that sick that time. But we've had, when it first came out, we'd have a house full of people that all had COVID. And this happened probably 2 or 3 times. We'd have a house full of people that all got diagnosed with COVID, and we'd be around them and we wouldn't get sick. We'd never get it. Didn't get it. And then out of the blue, a couple of years down the line, we got it. Just like randomly, didn't even know where we caught it from. So it's definitely a weird thing.
Yeah, thank God we're through it for the most part until something new comes along.
To the next round?
Yeah. But yeah. No, I feel like I keep derailing to politics.
Yeah, I know we're better than
keeping with the sort of
the AI?
Yeah, the AI and the technology and segment of the podcast, which is something I want to do. How do you see technology, and not even necessarily limiting to AI, but automation, technology, that sort of thing, how do you see that coming into your industry, and how do you see it's currently evolving and will evolve?
Yeah, pretty good question. I guess in general, I'm probably someone that likes technology. I like to find an easy way to do it. I'm probably basically lazy. I'm trying to find the easiest way with the least amount of work. So I use technology as much as we possibly can for a small company. I think we're pretty a fair way down the line with technology. I think the way I look at AI and all that kind of stuff is if it can take the place of a human, then it's always going to be financially. It's going to be a very good thing for businesses, because a human's always going to have a hangover, a bad day, a wife that's sick, a kid that's sick. You're always going to have issues with humans when you're like, if you're like me, you're hiring people to run a company or do a job. And I mean, I have the same problem, so it's not like it's no one in particular, but you're always going to have the human factor. So if you can find the technology to do a job that replaces 10% of a human, then it's probably you can probably put a number to that financially where it's a huge help, or it's a benefit to a company. I mean, I think socially there probably won't be enough jobs to go around sooner or later, because I think we are getting really good at streamlining what we do. I mean, you've got robots putting trucks together. There's all kinds of stuff out there now that is taking jobs. So I think socially it's going to be a problem, because there won't be. I think people need a purpose. They need a job to go to. They need to feel like they're part of a team. So you take that away from half the population, then you get half of them sitting at home thinking about how pissed off they are and what they're going to do about it. So you got to try and keep people working. But from a business perspective, I mean, I think it's coming whether we like it or not, because people that run companies are probably more worried about the bottom line than they are about someone's mental health. So
yeah, no, I agree.
It's coming.
I think, especially America, I feel like here it's very, very capitalist. You know, whether that's good, bad, whatever, it's all situational and depends. But I think that's sort of like a fact. And I think, companies do focus here a lot on purely what drives profits and outcome, rather than necessarily looking at what's most sustainable, either environmentally, socially, all those things, which is, for example, what I think New Zealand often does relatively well. But no, I completely agree. I mean, AI is here. It's not going away. There's no reverse button. No. Do you see, I mean, what do you think of self-driving trucks?
Yeah,
do you think those can one day replace what you guys do?
I don't think they'll actually replace what we do or anything specialised anytime soon. All the vocational trucks and the stuff that people are, that's got a lot of decision making and a lot of skills. I don't think it's going to replace that. But I think like the long haul truckers that are driving from one side of the country to the other or state to state, I think it will absolutely replace a lot of them guys. So I think you'll have these massive hubs where almost like a train station where the trucks drive themselves to a hub on the outside of the city. The truck parks up there and then you'll have another guy, maybe a local driver will grab the trailer and take it and deliver it. But I think that the long haul stuff where it's from where you got a driver sitting in a truck for 500 miles a day for 5 or 6 days in a row. We can put an automatic driving truck, just park it on autopilot, go to this location, and it drives day and night, doesn't have to stop, just goes day and night till it gets to that location. So it doesn't go to sleep, doesn't need coffee.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I can really see that coming pretty quick, to be honest.
So I think they call that like the last mile in like transportation terms. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's the same with like Amazon and all that. I think they've got the automation of it down to a science of getting things from point A to point B in long distance. But I think there's still very much the human factor needed getting it from the last sorting facility to your house.
Yeah.
It seems to be a very tedious job that you need a lot of, well, I guess what humans are good at, the thinking, the problem solving, every situation's different.
Yeah.
So that makes sense for what you said, that long...
I'm sure it'll evolve eventually, and things seem to evolve quicker than what we think they will, where they can get them trucks to go to specialised places. But like to get AI to unload a container on one of our trucks, I'm sure it would be possible to do it. Like someone smart enough to make it, take all them parameters into account and make a system that could unload them, but they'd have to charge me $5 million to do it, and we don't make enough money to pay for that system. So it's a long way off for, I think, for specialised stuff, just because it probably wouldn't be cost effective to make the system.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And in the shipping industry, and I mean this in sort of like the wide scope of the shipping industry, do you see any areas that you think have sort of been left behind with technology? Either, the port stocks, the data systems that they use for tracking everything, all this sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we're probably behind a bit in America, to be honest, with the way we operate here on a big scale. Like they've definitely Los Angeles has them ports with AI trucks now running around there where they're loading them at the port. But I think we're probably a bit behind Europe on that. As far as what we got left behind on, I don't think we're really far behind here. I think we just maybe it's such a big wheel. It takes a while for us to catch up. Yeah, the all the GPS and a lot of that stuff is all. I think doesn't really matter where you are. You have access to all that really good technology nowadays. So yeah. You have to rephrase that question because I'm too dumb to actually think it through.
No, that's a good answer. I don't think AI necessarily has to be put into everything. I think the big trend I'm seeing now, especially with like the Fortune 500 companies, the top dogs is the investors, the board, all of those high level executives are just pushing for AI, going, we need to get AI into our company. This is becoming the next best thing. Get it in there. Even if it turns out completely shit or is clearly underdeveloped and still needs a lot of work. They're still releasing it, and they also seem to be putting AI into so many things that simply just don't need it,
yeah.
or probably never will need it, just because they're trying to, I think, appeal to investors, Wall Street, people going, this is an AI boom, let's get AI and everything. So I actually don't think necessarily going AI and everything is the best way forward. And I think there's going to be a lot of companies who need it, but I think there's also a lot who actually don't really need it. It's not going to bring them much benefit.
Yeah, no, I think I'd have to agree with that. They always seem to overcook things on Wall Street, don't they?
Or at least I think that's short term, at least relatively short term. In the future, it might be different, but for now,
yeah, it's like the telecom stuff. When they put all that fibre in the ground, they put like 10 times as much as they needed, and they sold that on Wall Street like it was going to be have to have thing right now. And I mean, them companies all went broke after a while because there was not the they put all the infrastructure in, but there was no one to buy it. We didn't need anywhere near the amount they put on the ground. So yeah, I think Wall Street is pretty good at overcooking stuff, but they normally make all their money on the ups and downs, so it doesn't bother them what way it's going as long as it's moving. Most of them people.
No, that's true, and I think AI is how do I say it? I mean, it's a super sort of disruptive technology, and I think a lot of people have this mindset of fearing being left out, and I think that's a big thing, and that's, I think, bringing AI and underdeveloped AI to a lot of things. And by doing that, so chatbots, for example, I think is a great example, and that's currently what I've started my business in. Chatbots, traditionally, if you talk to your average person, get a bad rep. They go, I hate chatbots, don't want to see it, don't want to use it. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that so many companies have been trying to force it down people's throats, but they haven't actually done it in a way where they haven't approached it right. I think it's been an afterthought. Like they build their website and then go, we'll just add a chatbot to be modern.
Yeah.
And they don't actually. It ends up being more of a gimmick. They don't. Firstly, not all websites need chatbots, and those who do, I think they look at it as an afterthought, and therefore it's underdeveloped and it's a poor representation of what AI can do, and therefore I think a lot of chatbots just end up sucking. So I think chatbots, for example, are a great example of where AI could be really good, and it is really good when done properly. It just often isn't implemented properly.
Yeah, if it doesn't bring any like real value and doesn't help you, you're almost better off without it.
Yeah, because otherwise it's probably just going to annoy people and frustrate your customers, and then that gives chatbots everywhere a bad rep.
Yeah.
And I do think it's 100% the future. I think people in 5-10 years or whenever it is will be pretty much solely interacting with chatbots. And if you look at it from an objective view, I think there are a lot of benefits over that, where an AI can look over the entire inventory. If it can have a deep understanding of what you're trying to achieve, in theory it can assist you much better than a human, because it can look at your problem, analyze it, see other people who've had similar problems, see the solutions that they got given, have a look at everything you offer. I mean, it can link things together so much better, and it can, I guess, critical thinking, it can do that in some ways better. I think we're still a little far away from that sort of thing, but I think that's definitely the future. And currently, chatbots just they suck because they haven't actually been developed properly.
They're pretty good for writing like essays and stuff, like dragging text out, or if you want to ask it how to write an essay or a sales pitch, they do a really good job of that. But once you ask it something that's not mainstream, there's not the information for it to learn from, right? So how can it know the answer?
Oh yeah. So large language models are different again than your specialized chatbots.
Yeah.
I think that's a completely different market as well. But I think. And also the AI assistants, or whatever you want to call them, GPT, Gemini, all your big ones, they all have different varying degrees of performance and capabilities in areas. But I think I think they still need a bit of development.
Yeah. So how long do you think before they're integrated into like main, where they can actually do things that are not just like you have a chat or a machine that can do something that's AI, where it can physically do the job? Because I think that's when it's going to all change, when you actually can use AI to physically replace somebody.
I think we're limited currently by information, and the information is access to, and I think that's just because it's not widespread enough. Whereas if you had, let's say, every single website out there had a chatbot on it that knew everything about the business, and then your AI assistant could then chat with the chatbots, to get exactly the information you need. Because currently, ChatGPT seems to just be more of a glorified Google search engine. Obviously it does the writing, it can do visual, machine learning, it can analyze things. But when it comes to research and finding information, it's pretty much only got access to what Google has. And because it's in a lot of ways, it is like a Google search engine, where I think AI will one day be really beneficial and take that step further, is actually by being able to more critically think. So if you need a shirt, your Home Assistant will already know your size through your past order history. It will probably know what shirts you like, what colors you like, and then it can the GPT not only looks for whatever your AI personal assistant is at the time, not only looks for that item, but then actually compares. It will contact businesses for you, wait for a response, or talk with their chatbots and see, this shirt costs $20, this shirt turns 10, and then it costs $10, and advise you to go to this business. Whereas currently it can't do that, and that's limitations mainly with the actual physical technology, but also the information it's access to. It's not at that stage, and I think the only way we'll get to that real sci-fi personal assistant where you get it, get this for me, find this for me, do this for me, is when everything is integrated with AI and there's some sort of universal ecosystem that can work together.
So what about for stuff like Megan's a civil engineer, so they have a grading plan or a site plan. How long before it can replace that sort of person that's like doing all the calculations, the workflows, and surely that must be, it's just information, so I'd imagine that's probably going to displace a few jobs in the future, wouldn't you say?
Possibly. I think because a lot of that requires like going to site and doing stuff, that's maybe where like in the future where like humanoid robots come in. Like I know that's something they're starting to actually focus on properly, and there are a lot of big companies now doing that, like Tesla. You got Boston Dynamics. I think Google was trying to look at doing their own humanoid robot program as well. But I think those sort of more difficult tasks will only come when we've got humanoid robots, because those can be in the field, they can be learning as they go, and everything they see and record can be stored and used as training data, the same way self-driving is now done. Mm-hmm. Like if you didn't have the cars out there already with the cameras, already recording everything, already with basic AI detection, you wouldn't have the data to build the bigger models. And that's why, for example, Tesla's self-driving program is so good, is because their cars have been on the road for 15 years, 10 of that they've been recording pretty much everything they've seen, so they've got all of that training data they're able to use. So for more specialised tasks like a civil engineer, I think that will only come once humanoid robots or AI is deployed into the field. They see everything, they start interacting with things, and then they start learning and gathering the information, and then you can use that as a building block to achieve more complex tasks. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but
that sounds pretty. It has the ability to learn a lot faster than we do, doesn't it?
Yeah. But for that, you just have to somehow gather that data. And I think for those intricate things, for doing your plumbing or doing your electrical, which I think is very far in the future, but for getting to a point where robots can do that, I think first you need to get robots out there, gathering data, getting training data, and just it's very incremental, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I was thinking, like on a civil engineer situation, you would have a surveyor's already plugged in all the coordinates, and now they're using AutoCAD to do them sort of jobs, right? Well, if you plugged in every civil engineering job, the coordinates of every job for the last 100 years into a database, and AI could learn it, surely it knows this is what got come in, and this is what went out. When does it get to the point where it actually can do that job?
Oh, I get what you mean, right. So it all being like an internal, and humans, I don't know, but probably relatively soon.
Probably pretty quick, if it's just numbers.
Yeah, but I also think it's AI is also interesting because, and this is one of the thought experiments I've had, like, people are scared AI is going to replace us, but also thinking about it, if we look around just America, as a market, I think if we really wanted to replace people tomorrow, we have the technology to probably lay off half of the population in the IT government space and all of that, because a lot of people, their jobs are entering data or collecting data in some form, either being a receptionist or or doing actually rather mundane tasks that if we really wanted, we actually could replace now. And then I sort of got thinking, why haven't they? And I think one of the big reasons is like you said, the wheel is huge, and it's going to take a long time to get that moving.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a long time to get, all of these big companies to get their legacy, whatever forms they, some of them will probably be using databases from the 1990s. Some of them probably haven't gotten to a point where you can actually start implementing AI. So even if the technology gets there, God knows how long it's going to be after that before businesses actually start
using it.
Yeah, because I genuinely think if we really wanted to and had a need to, we could lay off so many people now with the technology we have. But we don't, because businesses are focusing on different things. It costs too much. They can't. They just they're focused on other things. They can't be bothered. I think there's a lot of that in there.
Yeah, the big company, the wheels are so big it takes a while to slow them down, doesn't it?
Yeah, and even small businesses, they probably don't. Small businesses probably then don't have the capital, especially initially when these technologies are super expensive to implement that.
Yeah.
Or to have the motivation to invest in that and implement that. So even if we came up with the technology for what you said, doing this like land surveying, even if it could be done, it might not necessarily be replaced for another 30 years. Who knows? Until the companies are actually in a position and have the motivation to bother implementing that.
Yeah, especially in America, I think they don't change too quick here.
No, I agree. I think that's what's one of the things that's quite unique about New Zealand. It's a small market, but they seem to have their fingers in almost everything. And there's some very innovative companies in New Zealand that have to compete on the American market, the European, so the global market, and they have to undercut, these gigantic corporations, and that means they have to do things much more efficiently.
Yeah. The Kiwis are pretty good at doing stuff on a small scale, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Very efficient.
And I think they're very good with working with very small budgets and actually getting a lot of result from very little resources. And even farming, there's so much, I think, more technology in the way New Zealand does their farming and manages their infrastructure, and even anything government related. Like here, it seems very dated.
Yeah.
Whereas in New Zealand, it actually seems relatively modern.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few American guys that have gone to New Zealand and looked at farming, and they're definitely cutting edge on their farming.
There's so much automation, and there's a lot of cutting edge stuff, and how they're monitoring the land and the soil, and they've got sensors everywhere, and
everything's a smaller scale, though, isn't it?
Yes, much smaller scale.
Yeah. If you look at the farming here in the States, holy hell, what's it?
Oh, it's huge here.
Yeah, it's a massive scale. You can drive from Chicago to Denver and see nothing but cornfields the whole way. It's a lot of, like, a massive scale, some of the farming.
But I think New Zealand, the reason it's possibly more technologically ahead in areas is because not only is labour, I think, generally much more expensive in New Zealand than, for example, here in the States, but they're also on a small island in the middle of nowhere, so they have to be able to export everything. So they have to be able to produce all of these things for much cheaper.
Yeah.
So I think they have to be much more efficient about it. And they're smaller as well. They've got
Yeah, but the economies of scale, and they're a long way from the main markets, aren't they?
Yes. So I think that forces them to
Yeah.
invest in technology earlier on, I think.
Figure out a way to be more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and undercut the competition.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I'd say it's pretty tough being a business in New Zealand, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. It's very competitive, and this is actually the other big thing I noticed coming here. Like, New Zealand, I would say it's a wealthy country. Generally, people are relatively wealthy. Like, the average income, the quality of life, I would say, generally is higher than the States. We definitely found, coming here, Texas is supposedly one of the cheapest states, and we found that it's super expensive. Like, there's no income tax here, which is, what we were sold was going to make everything cheaper. But when you account for how much health insurance is, how much car insurance is, home insurance contents, how expensive property taxes are, it ends up just being way more expensive to live here.
They tax you to death.
Yeah, some things are cheaper. Petrol, it's gas. Sorry, American viewers. Gas is definitely cheaper here. But also on the flip side, in New Zealand, most heavy-duty cars, trucks, and SUVs are all diesel. And diesel there is cheaper, but they also use significantly less. They have much smaller engines. They're much more fuel efficient. So at the end of the day, it might actually be balanced out, the difference in fuel.
I think it definitely is. The cost of living here, probably they tax you at a federal, state, local level. So each one doesn't seem like it's big, but you add them all up, and it's you might as well have a state tax as well with the property tax in Texas. But,
and to give context, like car insurance, I think here for the 2 cars it's $5,000 for us. In New Zealand, that would be about $500. Sort of thing. And I think there's less. Like here, it seems like a lot of these insurance companies, like I've heard a lot of stories, people have to be actively chasing their money or suing them, or, I've heard it can be quite hard to get your money from the insurance companies when they have to pay up.
Yeah. My opinion of insurance is not very high, so I think it's an absolute scam, to be honest. The whole insurance industry here is a shambles. They should clean the slate and start from scratch, because just that anyone's making any money are the lawyers, really, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy how, because we're currently going through the immigration process, and you seem to need a lawyer for everything here.
Yeah.
Everything requires you having a lawyer. And, by the way, they're super expensive as well. They don't...
No, yeah, it's a hard one to get your head around that one, actually. I'm probably a bit of a hater of their system here. Insurance and lawyers, they don't really bring any value to anything either. It's not like... my opinion on insurance is it was... like when we're at school, we learned what insurance is. Everyone pays into it. Everyone puts a little bit into it. And if someone has an accident, they get to take out of it, right? It's like it's a group thing. But I think they've kind of lost the real meaning of it in the States, because you pay into it. If you use it, they charge you more. And if you do have an accident, most of it's you go and people are just scamming it. So many people are ripping it off that it's not effective anymore. So yeah, it's a bit of having a trucking company. It's probably it's pretty expensive for us.
Sorry,
good.
Might want to move that up slightly.
Yeah, it's expensive, and you don't get anything back for it. In my opinion, you'd have to have. I think to get paid back for insurance, you'd have to have a catastrophic mistake. I think then they probably come to the party. But apart from that, it's a rip off.
No, that's the other thing we noticed. I forgot the term. What is it called? The initial fee that you have to pay before the insurance covers it.
Deductibles.
Deductibles. That's the one.
Yeah.
Here, deductibles are crazy expensive. In New Zealand, I'd say that maybe they're a tenth of what they are. So I feel like you really have to screw up to be able to justify using insurance here.
No, they just really I reckon they're just financial mistakes. They're not really insurance companies. If you make a mistake, they finance it over the next 10 years. So they'll charge you the big deductible for the mistake, and and they up your premiums over the next 10 years, so you pay for your mistake.
Yeah, and I think it's to me, I've tried to read into it and learn about it, but it does seem like such a complex issue, and it's very masked over. Like it's not clear how actually a lot of these insurances exactly work and what are their exact policies. But from what I've noticed, it seems to be like a very much a systemic issue where there are so many variables that are causing insurance to be so expensive. I think one of them is the cost of healthcare. Like it seems to be when you get in a car crash, most of that money is actually going towards paying medical fees. Whereas in New Zealand, it has universal healthcare. Obviously, it's not free; your taxes pay for it. But then also, insurance is drastically cheaper because they don't have to worry about Generally, they don't have to worry about your health insurance. Your health.
Medical.
You get in an accident, they repair the car. They don't have to spend $100,000 or whatever it costs to get you your medical bills paid.
Yeah. No,
and then with the big lawyer industry, I feel like there's a game where they play the insurance companies. They know how to play it. They know what to say to get the maximum amount out of the insurance companies.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that cost they try and justify through medical expenses.
Yeah, I think the lawyers are definitely running the show there, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's one of them things. It's an old industry. It's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of people in the food chain, so it'd be very hard to change.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. But we're still here. We like it here.
Oh yeah.
There's there's definitely a lot of cons to being here, but for us, the amount of pros outweigh the cons.
Oh yeah, no.
So, and my family is very business orientated. I've started another business here in the chatbots. I'm very focused on that, and I just see that the opportunity, if you want to go into like entrepreneurship or business, is just unmatched in the States.
No, it's definitely hard to beat. I would 100% agree with you on that. You cannot, you couldn't be in a better place if you've got the entrepreneurial spirit. This is the right place to be. There's plenty of opportunity.
Oh, and the point I was trying to make, before about when I was talking about how expensive it is coming here. What I was trying to say is, again, I went off course, but what I was trying to say is, despite it being more expensive to live here, people spend so much more than they do in New Zealand. Like if you look around, how many old cars do you see? Everyone seems to have a new car. Everyone seems to have latest shoes. There's a lot more consumerism in America, and I think it's unmatched. I mean, New Zealand, again, it's a relatively wealthy wealthy country, but people just don't seem to spend anywhere near as much as they do here.
Yeah, they're afraid to spend it. Yeah, no, you're 100% on that too. Americans the risk doesn't bother them. They'll buy it, carry on.
And it's very common. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just purely what I've heard, but a lot of people here have like huge credit card debts and have like 4 credit cards, and getting a loan here seems super easy if you have the points.
Yeah, no, it's definitely geared towards the money going around in circles in the States. Like they encourage you to spend it, spend it, and it just goes from one company to another. Which I guess it's good for the government. They clip the tax ticket every time it changes hands, so they're happy. Yeah,
and I think that's where a lot of the opportunity comes from in America to have a business, whereas in New Zealand you don't get that because someone is always needing something. People are always wanting to spend their money, whereas in New Zealand, and I presume a lot of other places, I think they're much more skeptical. They want to hold on to it. They want to keep it in the bank. They're a lot more risk adverse. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that one 100%. They're definitely, maybe, I'm not sure if that's is that a culture thing where you're always afraid something's going to go wrong, whereas in the States they don't seem to have that, they're never afraid that, next week's going to be worse than this week. They just keep on going, which is, I think that's one of the reasons why it's actually such a successful place, to be honest, because people like the economy, you give people a little bit extra money here, and they just spend it all.
Plus more often as well.
Yeah, so it just gets back into the economy. It goes around in circles.
No, I agree. I think that's very much a cultural thing. I think there's a lot of pressure to, especially I think, like the college experience in life, which is a completely another whole topic that I could talk about forever, just how different that is here in America. But I think it's in the culture where, you know, you got to have your latest truck, you got to have the latest clothes, you got to have all of these materialistic things.
Yeah,
I think that's ingrained in a lot of people.
and they push it all too, because you know you have a holiday that's a good excuse to spend money on just about every month of the year. You got Halloween, you got Thanksgiving. I mean, there's always something coming along.
Oh yes, and these events here are huge.
Yeah,
Like Christmas, Halloween, Thanksgiving, they're huge here.
yeah, it's good for. I guess it's good for the economy. They just keep on spending money, buying it, having a party, move on to the next one.
Yeah, definitely. Where are we at currently? Oh shit! All right, we're at 2 hours. Okay. Right.
I'm talking too much.
I will start wrapping up. You know, these questions are a little cliche, but I think they are important ones to have. What advice would you give to others who want to start a business or get into entrepreneurship, or I guess do what you did, which is have an idea, overcome the adversity, you know, follow through?
Yeah, I think get something you're good at, find a skill you've got that you're good at, and get really good at it, and then after that, I mean, you have to start a business, monetize it. But my big one that I think I've always been a stickler for is like consistency. Once you're good at something, you can't be good at it for one day. You got to show up every day, every week, every month, every year, and just keep on doing it consistently over and over again, and you'll get a customer base that relies on you, and they won't look anywhere else. They'll just keep coming back to you because you're there all the time. You don't let them down. So that's pretty. I think that's been maybe one of the reasons why I've had a little bit more success than some other companies, is because I'll never, if a truck's broken down, I'll go out there and work on it in the middle of the night if I have to, but I'm not gonna not perform. If we promise to do something, I'm going to show up every time. I think it's pretty easy to be a rock star once or twice, but to do it day in, day out consistently is probably a bit harder. So get a skill you're good at, master it, and keep on doing it.
I think that is a fantastic note to end on. So thank you so much, Bruce, for coming on. And hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.